Joe, good morning. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Hey, good, guys. How you guys doing today?
We're doing great. Now, last time we talked to you, you finished up the interview, and then you fired your offensive line coach. So are you going to fire anybody today after you talk to us?
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
It's an interesting thing because Philadelphia's job just came open yesterday, Joe. And, I try to explain to fans out there what the interview process for you guys is like. Maybe you could take a minute or two here to shed a light on, how difficult it is for the general manager to select the absolute right guy for the team and what it's like going through that.
Yeah, I would say that, they're all generally different is the first thing that I've always been told. And I've been on, a limited number of these. I've only been on 2, to be honest with you, one of which was here. It's a different process everywhere you go through. For me, it was a lot of just philosophical talks and conversations about what we valued and how we'd want to do things, a lot of stuff of that nature. But I would say that, it's a very tough decision for ownership and the general manager to really make, because while you think these interviews are really, almost like week-long things, they're not. They're very quick snapshots. You've got to get across your message. They've got to ask the right questions to kind of get to the bottom. And that's why, you talk about Robert coming for a second interview. I think the length of the interview, is very important in terms of being able to really get to know each other. For me, it was a long one. Spent the entire day here last year. There's some other communication as well on top of that. I think this year the one thing that's unique about it, talking to some of the guys that have been interviewing, around the league, is they're really starting through Zoom. So it's got to be a different feel for, sitting across from somebody, but now you're looking through a computer screen and trying to get a feel for each other in terms of, if you're hiring, is this a guy that I want to run my team? And if you're the guy, interviewing, is this the place that I want to kind of go ahead and try to establish myself with in terms of, do we really have a feel for each other? So to me, the second interviews in this process this year have to be critical. But the feedback I've got from guys interviewing this year, talking to guys around the league, is it has been obviously a different experience going through the Zoom stuff.
I would think that every team asks a prospective head coach who his staff is. Isn't that like one of the more important questions, and to have answers to be able to give an idea as to what your staff is going to look like, what kind of offense you believe in, what kind of defensive scheme and structure you believe in, and how your special teams are going to look?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. I think part of the question coming in is a lot of people want to see something in the long term, so some kind of coaching binder or calendar, something that shows you're organized. And then also along the same lines, they want to talk about your staff. Who do you want to bring in? The only thing I'd say this is the promising on the staffs is very difficult in terms of a lot of times guys go into interviews and say, okay, I'm going to bring, Mike Ditka's going to run this side of the ball, and Bill Walsh going to run the other side of the ball. It's like, well, those guys may not be available. And in the NFL, in terms of, what the rules were at least last year, you have to get permission to let guys out of their contracts and get going. So unless somebody's necessarily free, if their contract's running up, or they can get out, a lot of times there's just kind of promising names you can't always deliver on. So it's something you have to be careful with right there. To me, it was important last year with the Mariners was just I wanted to explain more so instead of who I was going to hire, the type of people I was looking for, what I want the offense to look like, the defense, kicking game, the kind of people I value in the organization. Because to me, it's when you do it right and you have success, there's going to be guys in your staff who are going to have opportunities to move on elsewhere as potentially head coaches or assistants that may become coordinators. So to me, it's more important about, the philosophy of who you want to hire, what kind of people you're looking for, and then what your plan for developing them internally is. And that's something that's important to me is instead of always having to go outside to bring somebody new in, is you're better off working with guys you already know. It's already established what's expected, what the culture is, and the players have a feel for them as well. So as they do well and you do well and other people have opportunities, you just promote from within and then bring in younger guys to develop and grow them inside.
Talking to New York Giants head coach Joe Judge on the Fan and CBS Sports Network. We are now more than a week away after your season ended. When you look back on the campaign, the 2020 New York Giants, what's your evaluation of how things went?
Yeah, look, it was obviously a very challenging year for everyone around the league in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things to overcome, before you even got to the X's and the O's. I'm proud of the organization where everyone was able to work together with one vision, get moving. I was proud of the way the players, handled a lot of adversity through the off season of how to prepare, definitely an adjustment to training camp, and then a lot of things within the season in terms of the protocols they had to operate in, throughout the way. And I think there's some things that, obviously you don't make public and you don't talk or make a big deal about because everyone's dealing with things, but there are a lot of things within the league that every player on every team this year had to really deal with, which was far from normal in the scope of any normal football season. I'm really proud of the way our guys worked. I made it clear last week talking to the team and talking to everyone else that, look, I guard a lot of things that I do very closely and don't let witness and everything, but I really had, really one true goal for this year, and that was to get the foundation and the culture laid. And I found that, that was definitely a success for our team moving forward. And I found that out really when we were at 1-7, that midway point. And obviously there's a lot of, difficulty and there's a lot of noise on the outside. But inside, I could see the guys coming to work every day, doing it the right way, trusting the process, and improving. And then that started turning in the back of the year. We were able to go 5-3 in those last 8. But I think all that was from all the positivity and belief they had in the system going through those first weeks where it was 1-7. So to me, the toughest part is getting the foundation laid to make sure that everything you build on top of that, you can stand on what the base of the organization is going to be. And I was really proud of our players of how they were able to do that.
It's a learning experience for sure. First and foremost, how happy were you to hear that Patrick Graham was turning down head coaching opportunities and interviews to stay with you?
Well, look, keeping Pat here was definitely a priority for us. We know Pat's going to have a lot of opportunities going forward. He's a very, very smart coach. He's a very good communicator. He has a lot of really good ideas, and he's very good getting the players to buy in and understand the concept he's trying to do. But, yeah, look, I'll tell you what, that to me was huge. That was huge. Pat's a great coach. He's a good friend. Being able to keep in this organization for as long as we can, that definitely was a priority. He's a tremendous help to me. He carries that title of assistant head coach, and that's not just fluff on a sheet. He does a lot of things helping me internally. To be honest with you, right now we're in the building together. He's the only other coach in here right now. We've already started kind of floating through some sheets of, free agents and start poking around some of the draft stuff right now. So, he's great to always bounce ideas off each other. And definitely, look, I'm definitely happy he's coming back next year.
Continuity is a key for sure, and that's a good thing for you guys. Any regrets on playing Daniel Jones against the Arizona Cardinals, especially after coming off the big victory against Seattle? I thought you guys raised your level of play to support your backup quarterback, Colt McCoy. You come back, and it was obvious to all of us that Daniel was not 100%. And I know you have to make a tough decision there because the player wants to play, but it really looked like he wasn't ready to play.
I'm not a big regrets person. I know what you're alluding to on that, though, Boomer, and it's definitely a fair question. I would say this, going into that game, we made sure that we did absolutely everything we could to ensure that he's going to be able to go out there and he was going to come out of the game no worse off than he would be with the current injury that he had. And to be honest with you, that actually improved throughout the entire year. And at no point did he have a setback with the hamstring issue. And this guy did a really good job. And look, it wasn't easy for him. He's a tough dude. And look, sometimes there's a lot of injuries that are worse than kind of are initially led on to. And his was definitely a significant injury that he battled through for the rest of the year. There were some things we had to adjust to within the game. Obviously, it was a different style of play than what we've been doing for the previous weeks with Daniel. Arizona had a good game plan, and to be honest with you, we didn't coach well enough in that game, and we didn't play well enough in that game to take advantage of it. But Daniel was physically able to go on the field. To me, it'd be more about making better adjustments in the game and making a better game plan on the front end. But we have to learn from that experience and go forward. But I'm proud of the way both him and Colt played this year. I think one thing about Colt is how good a teammate he was throughout the year of staying ready and being very supportive of Daniel. When his number got called, I think the team rallied around Colt so much because they saw how hard he worked in practice on a daily basis and how much of a team guy he really was. And, I think one of the funny things is, it's almost the defense, had such a close connection to Colt because he played so much against our defense in practice and was great in terms of giving us feedback as coaches that we would do certain things for whether it's a third down or red zone game plan. We'd sit down after practice with Colt, and between him, myself, and Pat Graham, he would kind of just give us some insight. Hey, listen, I see what you're doing here. I can tell what the coverage is going to be based on this guy's alignment, or this disguise was tough for me to pick up on. So he gave us a lot of feedback, and those defensive guys really got challenged by him on a daily basis because Colt wasn't going out there to just go ahead and read a card. Like, he was going out there to make a play and try and win the drill. So they got to compete against him every day. So when his number was called, there's a lot of confidence from the team and him as well.
Joe, we're talking to Joe Judge, head coach of the New York Giants. We often talk about dedication, a player's dedication to his craft, to his business, working hard, keeping his head down, not making the story about himself. It's a team-first attitude, which you brought here. And given in light what happened with Dwayne Haskins down in Washington and how everybody talks about dedication and how you measure somebody's dedication coming out of the draft, why are you so sure that Daniel Jones can be a long-term solution at quarterback for the Giants?
You know what? About a year ago when I took this job, obviously everyone's busting my chops a little bit because I wasn't fast to start talking about any individual players and try and put any kind of titles on them. And that was trying to be fair to the players. And I didn't want to go ahead and create expectations that they had to live up to. I wanted to give them the opportunity to learn the systems, to perform, and just grow within what they're doing. We have a young team, especially a lot of the players who are being asked about. We're the young players. specifically with Daniel, and I shared this with him earlier in the years, I told him, I said, look, part of the thing we'd evaluate this year is I'd evaluate you and see if he was really the answer and see if he was the guy that we could build with. And there hit a point in the year where you could see there were different, traits that he had that the team really responded to, and his level of play was raised. Now, look, there's a lot of things you could argue in terms of, statistical output, this or that, but I'm just telling you, when you watch the guy, how he handles the huddle, when you watch how he has command over the offense, when you watch how he's adjusted within game plans, when you see the level of toughness he plays with, and you watch him prepare away from the field, better than anybody else, on a daily basis. And that's saying a lot because our guys really empty the tank every day. There's a lot of things you look at with him. You say, okay, this guy gives us confidence to go forward with him because we know he's going to be prepared. We know he's going to compete, and we've seen improvement from him. And there's a lot of things that kind of go unnoticed, maybe by the naked eye, or things you're not privy to seeing within a daily day of meetings or practice. But there's a lot of things he's just done repeatedly where I can look at him with confidence and say, okay, this guy gives our team a chance to be successful.
Talking to Joe Judge on the Fan and CBS Sports Network, your comments after Week 17, Eagles-Washington, went everywhere. It became a national topic. It wasn't a New York-only topic because of what you had to say. You didn't address the Eagles specifically, but a lot of people knew what you were talking about. Now, some of the criticism that came out of it was, hey, you guys went 6-10. You weren't good enough to make the playoffs. You have to look at yourself in the mirror as opposed to worrying about what another team has done. Some of that criticism that was out there, would you like to address the people that were coming after you and your record as opposed to pointing the finger maybe at what the Eagles did to not try to win a game in Week 17?
Yeah, I'd say first off, any criticism on me, to be honest with you, I've got pretty thick skin. I always keep in perspective what it is. But I would say this, look, I spent about the previous 20 minutes of that interview explaining that we had 16 opportunities and we didn't take advantage of them. And that was my message to the team after the season. That's the reality of what it is. It's a production business, and we have to do better. And our fate should never be in anybody else's hands. And we don't depend on anyone else to be successful. And we're not upset with somebody else for our limited opportunities. There are our opportunities, and we have to take advantage of them. I can't be more clear about that. Look, I'm not a guy that makes excuses. We're not a team that makes excuses, not now, not ever. My comments were clearly what I've been saying to our team since day one about our approach to how we're going to play the game here. And my comments were specifically in response to the question that my players have been asking me throughout the day concerning some of the things that happen around the league. To me, it's important to respect the game. It's important to respect the players that lay it on the line for you every day. That, to me, is critical. Our job as coaches is very simple. You put your players on the field, and you do everything you can to give them a chance to be successful. That's it. Don't make it more than what it is. And the players' job is to go out there and execute the plan and play as hard as they can for 60 minutes and do everything they can to win the game. And that's what it really is. And to me, just the base respect for the game is what I was trying to get across, and the respect for everybody who's been involved with this season, all right, from coaches, players, support staff, and the families around. There's been a lot of sacrifices made around the league. And, look, all I was trying to get across was the point of, we're going to always do everything we can to be successful here. We're going to always try and put the players in position to be successful, and we expect the players to always play for 60 minutes.
So
it has nothing to do with us not making the playoffs at all. Look, that's our fault, point blank. We have to do better. 6-10 is not a playoff team. That's reality. That's what it is. You don't deserve to be in the playoffs at that. And our guys know that, and they understand that. Our guys are very, realistic at how they look at things. We're very honest and transparent with our team in all moments. We're not trying to sit back and trying to make some kind of excuse, or we're not sitting back trying to paint some picture someone else owes us anything. They don't. We owe it to ourselves to go out there and make sure we take advantage. But what I was commenting on was a question specifically about had our players they asked me about that, how did I respond to it? And I was very clear on what my message to the team was throughout the year from I've gotten here day one. And then also on the last meeting we had as a team, that's what I share with the team as well, just so they can understand our approach as an organization here and my approach as a coach to make sure they're always out there fighting for a reason.
So do you believe that the Philadelphia Eagles, the way they handled that game in Week 17, disrespected the NFL game?
Look, I'm going to let the Eagles speak for themselves on that one right there. I think I'm clear at this point, Greg, and just I'm going to leave it at that right there.
Okay.
I was pretty thorough in the way I explained everything, so
I got you.
Let's go ahead and let them.
I actually like the way you explained it, Joe. So I don't, you keep saying it, man, because you're talking to your fans, you're talking for your organization, you're not talking for anybody else. Now it is interesting that Doug Peterson gets fired yesterday, and nobody likes to talk about coaches losing their jobs and things of that nature. You've coached against him now as the head coach of the Giants twice this year. You also saw him in the Super Bowl when the Eagles were able to come back and beat you guys and put out huge offensive numbers. Your sense of who he is as a coach, and did he deserve to be fired, and should he be hired somewhere else?
Well, look, I'm never going to comment on anybody else's job. That's their decision as an organization. I can tell you I have a tremendous amount of respect for Doug. He's obviously accomplished a lot in this league. He's done a lot with that team. I've gone against him twice. Both games were obviously, hard competition. Each one of us, we're able to have success with our teams one way or the other throughout the year. But I have a lot of respect for Doug. Going against him now, like you said, several times, including going back to 2017 when I was an assistant. And he's done a good job with that team. I'll let the organization speak for the decisions, what they want to do going forward. I'm going to always, go ahead and avoid talking about somebody else's job, whether it's on this staff or somewhere else. But a lot of respect for him and what he's accomplished in this league.
Now, in a general sense, not just Doug Peterson, but do you believe, having been a head coach for a year now, that when someone is, an organization moves on from a coach, that coach, if he's given an opportunity, should jump right back in? Or do you think that maybe after the way things went in a certain place, that maybe a year off would benefit a particular coach before jumping back into the game?
I think it's on an individual basis. I think you've seen on both sides. You've seen guys take a year off and come back and have great success. You've seen guys jump right into another job and do the same thing. So to me, it's on an individual basis. I think, obviously you've got to look in terms of, what each individual coach, needs in terms of, time to, gather his thoughts or get steam to go back up going, whatever it may be. And then also what are the opportunities presented to him at the same time? Just to jump back into any opportunity isn't always the right opportunity.
Did you watch the games this weekend on TV, Joe?
I did. I watched them all. I sat there with my sons and sat there and watched the game. And look, it's great watching playoff football, but it's also very frustrating at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I know that the fact that we had 6 games this weekend was awesome. I thought the NFL did a great job with Super Wild Card Weekend, adding another wild card team, which was great. And it's unfortunate you guys didn't make it. When you look at these other teams, is there a common thread that you see when it comes to the success of those teams?
Look, I think when you get to playoff football, it all comes down to execution. You can talk about what teams have done throughout the year, how they've attacked different game plans. To me, it truly comes down to those 60 minutes of execution. And, I talked to our players before I left. I said, when you watch these games, sit back, relax, allow yourself to just watch and enjoy the games, but also watch the game from the lens that you've learned to really see it. Look at the situations. Look at the things that really impact the game. Turnovers, penalties, the mental errors. Take a look at, maybe something someone could have done differently and how we would have handled it. And really try to look through that lens. That's kind of when I watch it. I kind of sit down and I watch it and, make a mental note or sometimes jot something down in a notebook that I, come back in. There's a lot of texting going back and forth, to be honest with you, between, me and other members of our staff in terms of, all right, you see a situation, what would we do differently? How can we handle that? Or, hey, it's something maybe we should implement into what we're doing. But I think the common thread with all these teams always ends up being just execution. As you watch these games, obviously the intensity is up. But it's always a couple plays. It's never, very rarely is it a blowout, right? It's always a couple plays here or there, and how could you handle it different? It's a fumble here, it's an interception there, it's a costly penalty that kills a drive. It's a mental error where someone misses a blitz pickup and the quarterback gets strip sacked. So there's something that always, kind of ties to it. To me, it's who can do the best job for those 60 minutes, on that given day. Because at this point, all the teams in are capable of winning any game on any day.
I'm not going to get specific. I want to get specific about a particular team. But first, though, Tom Brady was amazing on Saturday night, was he not?
Oh yeah, he was.
Oh
he
God,
was fun to watch him.
Yeah, and he knows how to stand in that pocket. He knows how to read the defenses. And this is a hypothetical, and I know you've been up with Bill in New England. I was just wondering how you would have handled, like, say, a Week 17 game where where you are in the playoffs. And let's say your guys are healthy. I'm not talking about resting guys that have bumps and bruises that are maybe a little older and they need it. But I do think that some teams get a little bit careless in the final week of the season when the game doesn't really matter or anything, and they give players off. And then when they come back and play the next week, they don't look right. I know that wasn't the way that it was done with Bill Belichick. Is that how you would carry your team?
I think it always comes down to the specific team and players involved in that specific case, where it's not going to affect seeding one way or another. I think for the most part, most players want to go out there and play a couple series. That's from my experience of listening to kind of older veteran players. There were times we had discussed sitting guys, and they came in and say, no, I want to go ahead and get the first quarter under my belt before we get into the playoffs. So I think there's things you have to consider in terms of who the team is and how they respond to everything. For the most part, you could go ahead and say, well, some such team, rest of their players came back rusty and started slow. I think that can happen either way. But to me, it's, you want to play your players as much as possible. You want to put them out there. You still want to be successful in that final game. I don't really see any game ever as a throwaway game or, take for granted game. So you want to put your team out there and give them a chance to be successful. And sometimes at the end of the year, that does include getting some other guys some reps because as you get into the playoffs, they may end up having a significant role that maybe they haven't had throughout the regular season. You want them to be prepared as well. So there's a time you want to go ahead and make sure your guys rotate in there and get as many reps as can be.
See, it's a tricky situation because I look at what the Pittsburgh Steelers did in Week 17, and there was a playoff spot on the line for the Cleveland Browns. It also affected other teams in the league, like the Miami Dolphins, and the Steelers did not put their best players out there in that game, and that had an effect on other organizations. What's your opinion on that in that situation as opposed to your opinion on maybe making a change in-game like we saw what the Philadelphia Eagles did in Week 17?
To be completely honest with you, I didn't pay too much attention to how Pittsburgh handled the Week 17 deal.
Well, they sat Ben and they sat Marquise Pouncey. So, they didn't play Ben Roethlisberger. So, clearly they weren't playing their best players at the most important positions.
Look, I'd have to ask Mike and talk more about what his thought was behind that. Obviously in terms of how that goes right there, was he trying to get somebody else reps to prepare them in case they had to play for the playoffs? I don't know where Ben was with everything in terms of health-wise. I can't really speak on that team right there.
So, did you call Nick Saban after last night's game, congratulate him, and say how you can get Devontae Smith on your team?
I'll definitely touch base when talking about the spring. I shot him a text this morning. Other than that, to be honest with you, the score got kind of carried away, and I've fallen asleep before the end of the game, but woke up to a lot of Roll Tide texts. But they're definitely impressive. There was a lot of good players in that field from both teams last night.
Could you imagine coaching against them at Mississippi State as opposed to being the New York Giant head coach? That would be an awful tough job to do, I'm sure.
Hey, last one for you. I know you're so focused and you work so hard, and we know you're going to be in that building all the time. But in the off season, do you have any hobbies?
You know what? There's things I enjoy. I'm not a big golfer. I haven't gone hunting in a little while, to be honest with you. Kind of, living in Massachusetts for years, that wasn't something that was really readily available. I haven't had a chance to go out in Jersey yet. But, look, it's mostly family time for me, to be honest with you. Kind of when I get free time, I got 4 children. I try and catch up with them as much as possible, be involved with them. They all play youth sports. I try to be at every game I can. And then, around the house, there's always something going on with the kids. So, to be honest with you, if I'm not working, my hobby really ends up becoming my family.
Yeah. Sounds like me, Boomer. I told you. It's family and it's work. I don't have any hobbies.
It's family, it's work,
That's
it's everything, yes.
Joe, it was great talking to you and getting to know you this year. Best of luck in this offseason, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you soon.
Yeah, definitely, guys. I appreciate you.
All right, Joe, thanks.
That's Joe Judge, New York Giants head football coach.
Go.